everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day, and wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world. Thank you, as always, for all of your support. As always, we appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for engaging with our content, and we appreciate all of your wonderful feedback. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And again, I want to give a big shout out to our amazing sponsors who have really helped us continue to bring you some amazing conversations. So I want to give a big shout out to Book Creator, EduAid, and Peelback Education. We appreciate all of your support so we can continue to bring conversations like today's into our education space so we can continue to grow and learn together. And today I am really excited to welcome back a past guest that I've had on the show. And today we're going to be talking about a really great project that he has started within his school building. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that because it deals with one of my favorite things and one of his favorite things too, which is amplifying student voice, and in a very great way. So for those of you that are tuning in or needing some ideas or wanting to learn more about how you can amplify authentic, genuine student voice and really bring that into the learning, today's the day. So you are lucky to be here as I welcome I consider him a really great friend, and I've had the opportunity to meet him, and I'm just excited that he's here to talk with me today, Mr. Tim Belmont. Tim, how are you doing today?
Fonz, I'm doing great. It's so great to be back on My EdTech Life and great to see you. And I'm just great for this opportunity to just chat and talk about what I've been up to. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you were here a couple of years back, and I mean, time flies. Talk about time
Yeah,
flying, and
totally.
it was just fantastic that you were on. And I mean, just getting some feedback too. I remember you were telling me, you had some family members also watching the show, and they were just so excited and everything. And I mean, that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for joining me again, and for our audience members, though, Tim, that this might be the very first time that they get a little peek into your world, into what you are doing. Can you give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm based in New Jersey, and I have been teaching language arts for the past 14 years. So I teach at Lyndhurst High School, and I mostly teach ninth graders. I teach mainly freshman English, and then I also teach public speaking and advanced public speaking. And aside from teaching English, I also am my district's technology coordinator. So I help run trainings for teachers on the technology platforms that we've invested in, giving them ideas on how they can meaningfully integrate technology into their classrooms, which also has included, as you could imagine, over the last couple of years, some new responsibilities like being on the AI committee and thinking about things like that and how that can come into the classroom. And something that's been a passion of mine through my teaching, especially within my context, teaching public speaking and advanced public speaking, has been not just focusing on more sort of traditional speeches where the student is up in front of the classroom, but bringing in technology and modern ways that speaking skills can come into the classroom. So podcasting has become a pretty big part of that. It's become a part of my public speaking class. I've have students demonstrate their mannerisms and also the idea of connecting with audiences through recording short shows. And then the elective advanced public speaking, that is a class that I created, really has almost half of the class is recording podcasting. And we get into some of the more technical aspects, but then again, it's such a great opportunity for them to demonstrate their speaking skills and connect with others. So it's become just a big part of my everyday, is that sort of podcasting step.
Oh, I love it. And, that's something that's such a fantastic opportunity, first and foremost. And I am a big fan, a big proponent of authentic student voice and allowing students, I should say, to be able to demonstrate their learning, not just in a written form, through a worksheet or, through slides, but just that the speaking aspect of it is so important. And at least from my experience and from what I've seen is with language acquisition and building that confidence, building, like you mentioned too, something very important is having that authentic audience, your
Hmm.
authentic self, your authentic voice, and just really sharing that with others and building on those soft skills, the collaboration, communication skills, the critical thinking, all of those things as you dive into creating a script that
Hmm.
is going to be fit for what it is that you might be asking for depending on the assignment. But I want to ask you here because I've been to several conferences, and one of my favorite things to do is present on podcasting in the classroom. Now, oftentimes what happens, and I feel, is that many people, when they hear podcasting, or maybe even like maybe district leaders also who may not be aware about the power of podcasting, sometimes I feel that they think that it's more of a tool, like a gimmick, just something just a little different. But I don't think they realize, how much of a pedagogical shift this can be, especially in an environment within a classroom. So I want to ask you, Tim, if you can just dive in a little bit and maybe give us a little example as far as how you integrate podcasting with your students, maybe describing some of the assignments in depth and really just the outcome of that, not only as a finished product, but as far as the student and how they feel in sharing their authentic voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree. It's very easy to be like, oh, podcasting, it's just, oh, people are doing it just because it's this popular online thing and that's the only reason. Which, I mean, it is a huge industry. And so there is some value to being like, this is a popular thing. And that in itself, I think, is a good reason to pursue it because it has a lot of transferable skills to careers and things like that. But it absolutely has, it's just an avenue for students to express their opinion and their learning that sometimes isn't as accessible, or maybe they're not as comfortable with writing. So to give a couple of examples, I just wrapped up one of my public speaking classes, which is a half-year course. And uh, it's a sort of more traditional class. Originally, it's really an introduction to public speaking. So it really is about giving students the confidence to stand up in front of the class and just get comfortable being in front of each other and having that opportunity to sort of experiment. And the final project that we did was a podcasting project where students had to, they were asked to choose a career or a passion or a hobby that requires public speaking skills, and then record a podcast with them sharing how that field uses public speaking. So it was not only them expressing what they've learned about public speaking, but then they had to use their public speaking skills to create the product itself. And it's always interesting because obviously public speaking is a very nerve-wracking endeavor for most students. I think most people in general. I mean, I tell them all the time I get nervous just when I'm up talking in front of anybody. But it's always sort of amazing to see which students maybe showed trepidation when we were doing other assignments. And then within this medium of podcasting, they really are able to articulate what they're thinking, and they get that confidence that maybe they didn't have before. And especially if you give them that ability to infuse it with something that they care about and they want to talk about, that choice is a huge aspect of it. Even if, with this assignment where they had to choose a career, it's a pretty narrow band that they could talk about. It's not like I told them talk about anything, but even within that prompt I gave them, they had the choice to choose something that is of personal interest to them, which I think is always huge, is allowing that ability for them to really bring in that personal connection to it. And so with that, I was able to not just figure out whether or not they understood how public speaking applies in life, but then there's that other layer of sort of grading their expression that they're using in their product. So that's the most recent example that I used. But again, you're able to allow them to express what they know on different levels at the same time through something like a podcast, which I think is a huge benefit to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, kind of going along with that, that's a great segue into my next question that I did want to ask, because I know for us within our circle, we're going to conferences, teachers hear this all the time, and I'm always saying it too as well. We always use the phrase student voice, student voice, student voice. And so we say it so much, but sometimes I feel like maybe it's might have lost its meaning somehow along the way, or there's different varieties and ways that students can actually share and express their student voice. So sometimes it becomes a little bit more kind of like symbolic rather than kind of like a structural way of doing it. So I kind of want to ask you, as far as in your classroom, as your students are working on these projects, what are some ways that they understand how to distinguish maybe the authentic student voice as opposed to more of a performative student voice, especially within the context of not just podcasting, but within the assignment?
That's a good question. And something that I talk to my students about this really throughout all of my public speaking classes, because this is the idea of having an authentic student voice. It doesn't really just apply to podcasting. It can apply to really anything where they're expressing ideas. And so one way that I frame it is that when you're choosing a topic for a presentation or a podcast, you don't just want to choose something that you think the audience will be interested in. It's sort of like a Venn diagram where you want it to be something that the audience you think will be interested in, but also that you are interested in talking about. And that's really hard to fake, being interested in something. And a lot of times the audience will realize that. And so really the best way to be engaging is to be engaged yourself in whatever you're talking about. So it can be tough sometimes, because a lot of times students might be motivated by getting the best grade. And I really try to emphasize this is an opportunity for you to express what you care about. And of course, you want it to be as engaging as possible, but you want to get something out of it as well. So I stress that to the students. And that's with the podcasting especially, but then even with just formal presentations that we do in front of the class. And I have a slide that has that Venn diagram with what you're interested in, what the audience is interested in, and then that little middle part, the overlap, is really what you want to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's something that is great that you share because, and many times because they are concerned about the grade. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, what was most important as always was that authentic voice. Like I wanted to know more about what they were thinking and the way they expressed it, that would allow me to know if they did master the content or there was understanding of the content. And so very much like you said, if there's some students that may not feel comfortable, I mean, you're going to hear a little bit, maybe there's those misconceptions. So for me as a teacher, I just really liked for them to not only work on it on paper, but I mean, if they can verbalize it and express it, for me, I think it was a win-win in the sense that they worked on how to present the information on that particular assignment and then their comfort level, but also for me, be able to hear and find those misconceptions that I can easily reteach. And that's just being in a general ed classroom per se, as far as a self-contained teaching multiple subjects. I know you're working specifically on speech, but still that is very important. And those skills that they do gain, I truly believe that they are very, very important. I mean, if I think back to my very first communications class at university level, wow, I mean, talk about learning about public speaking. I mean, I know we did presentations in high school, but when you get into college level, I mean, it is very different. And luckily, I
Mm-hmm.
had a great professor that I learned a lot from. And, you get better with practice and learned what verbal crutches were and things of that sort. And, you continue to grow from there. So that's something that's great. And I know that students definitely grow with the more that they practice. And so going back to the content here, as far as that genuine, authentic voice, now when you present their products or they present their products to a genuine audience,
hmm
what do you feel that maybe that reshapes the accountability as far as the effort is concerned that they put on their part? And are there any projects that maybe you've done? And I believe maybe you've shared a couple of times, like through NPR. I know that there was a podcasting project that they did.
hmm
If your students did participate in that, can you tell us like what it is that you saw when a student truly knew that there was going to be an authentic, genuine audience listening to their work?
Yeah, and this is a big part of, and it's a challenge that I've been sort of trying to address over the past year, but it's huge. Really heading into recording a podcast and having a wider audience in mind, that adds to that authenticity. A lot of times, uh, knowing that they're making a product that is, it's a product podcast with a genuine audience that's going to listen to it. They may have feedback. It's a chance for them to get their voice beyond school walls. The attitudes that they have definitely changes, and they take it a lot more serious. And you mentioned the NPR Student Podcast Challenge, which I've now integrated this as part of my advanced public speaking class. It is a podcast recording contest that NPR does every year, and it usually is in the spring. So I think that this year the deadline to submit is in May, and essentially students need to, they have some prompts that students take up, and they have to record a podcast addressing one of the prompts, which is pretty general, and it definitely allows for students to share their opinions. And then there are pretty specific guidelines, like they can't use any recorded music. They have to record any music and sound effects themselves. And I've had some students actually record their podcast and submit it to the contest. And the excitement that these students have when they do it it's like unmatched. I've had students who are staying well after the bell rings at the end of the day, just recording, sitting with me and editing, getting suggestions on how to tweak their recordings. And it just really invigorates them when they know this is being sent out to a wider audience. It's an opportunity, and that authenticity really has them rise to the occasion. So it's one of the favorite things that I do is when we have these opportunities for students to record and have it go outside of the classroom walls, which it also has been a challenge to sort of navigate that. But I've been trying to find creative ways to have it, adhere to guidelines, but then still have that authentic audience. But it's been great, and I'm looking forward to my students submitting their podcast this year to the competition.
Excellent. And I think the way that you describe it too, I mean, cognitively, emotionally, there's a lot that goes into it. And I mean, the students are heavily invested in
hmm
that final project. They see, again, not only the fruit of their labor but putting it out there. And for them at that young age, and being in high school and putting themselves out there with the genuine audience of adults that are going to be listening, or the judges and so on. I think that is something that not everybody is prepared for many times, or maybe they don't think how grand this is as far
hmm
as, the implications of somebody out there that is listening to their work, their thoughts, what's coming from their heart, and that they're putting down on paper, scripting, and then polishing that product for the end result. And I think that's something that is great. And yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. One thing that I did want to point out is that when we do these products, the project for the NPR Student Podcast Challenge, I never start off and I'm like, listen, you need to just let it all out there. You need to just bleeding heart tell everybody about your life. yet they want to do that. So that always sort of blows my mind when it's like, wow, they really are, they're genuinely sharing these personal things about their lives. And so it's just something where they take up that opportunity.
Behind every classroom door, there's a story of patience, creativity, and the quiet power of shaping the next generation. Peel Back Education shines a light on these lived experiences, the real voices of educators on the front lines. Don't just subscribe to Real Voices, discover them, connect with them, and maybe even share your own too. Visit peelbackeducation.com to discover the stories shaping education and the people just like you living them every day.
No, and I mean, not only that, Tim, but I mean, looking back at even with the presentations that I do on podcasting, oftentimes I think that, like we talked a little bit about it, some people may dismiss it as, I mean, they're just going to record their voice. They're just going to record their thoughts. They're just going to record what they did in that lesson. But I think it hits so many other things. I mean, for me, it's just on the literacy standpoint. I mean, there's scripting. They're taking either a chunk of learning and really condensing it, because at least what I have done in the classroom is I won't tell you like, hey, I'm going to give you 30 minutes or I'm going to give you 3 minutes. It's a 90-second podcast and you're going to go ahead and summarize what it is that we talked about. And in those 90 seconds, you're going to show me exactly what it is that you learned and things of that sort, and making it quick in that aspect. Of course, then you can extend those projects too. But I mean, just the consideration and the awareness of writing a clear script, getting everything ready, making sure that everything fit and it's in line and it's sequenced. I mean, it really shows some strong academic core skills, and not just, hey, let me go ahead and click record. And now all of a sudden I'm just a podcaster and just talking into the mic with no form or at all whatsoever. So that's one thing that I do love about it. So I'm glad that, throughout that work, I know that your students develop that too as well. So Tim, I wanted to talk to you because I know a couple of months ago, actually in January, as we started the year, you had posted on LinkedIn, and, we were connected on LinkedIn, and I saw that you had posted something regarding the Bell Tower, a project that you're working on. So can you tell us a little bit about the Bell Tower and maybe what the vision is?
Sure. And it's been really fun to work on, but it started with one of the issues that I alluded to a little bit earlier, which is having an authentic audience for student podcasts. I found that, especially sort of last year and the year before, when I had students doing these podcast projects, they were recording and they were these really, really great shows that were exploring ideas that were really personal to them and interesting and highly engaging. And I had experimented with a bunch of different ways to share the podcasts, ranging from having students sign a waiver to have them uploaded to Spotify for sharing, to having a Google site with an embedded audio file on them. And the challenge that I was facing is that I wanted the ability for students to listen to and engage with each other's podcasts in an authentic manner, sort of the way that people listen to podcasts in everyday life through an app or through the internet, but then also allowing them to share it beyond the classroom, yet still following the education privacy laws such as FERPA and COPPA, and not worrying about students' personal information sort of being out there in a way that might be uncomfortable for community members or people in the district. And there were some ways that I got around it a little bit where, again, I mentioned I made a Google site and they uploaded their audio, and then that could be shared within the school. You could limit it so it's only for students who are logged in, so they could share it with other classes in the building, which was working pretty well. But I was noticing that students weren't really engaging as much as I would have liked with each other's podcasts, because the process of doing that, it doesn't feel sort of authentic. So I thought, what if there was a platform where my students could put their podcasts on it, and they could sort of choose who it's shared with, whether it's in the classroom or even a little bit further beyond. But it had some of the authentic feeling features that are on some of these podcast sharing websites and apps. So allowing them to browse through classmates' podcasts, they could listen to them and sort of pick up where they left off later if they want. They could upload podcasts that they made, and they could put up artwork for it. They could generate a transcript and have the teacher have control of how far these podcasts go. Share them with the class, share them with other classes, have shareable links that are trackable so they could be turned on and off. And so a little over a year ago, I've done some coding projects in the past. I've made some websites that I've used in my classroom, ranging from a little like Twitter clone based on Romeo and Juliet, where students were tweeting as Romeo and Mercutio and things like that. And I had messed around with a couple different things using Node, which is a programming language. And I started to piece together this website. And a year later, a little over a year later now, it's a basically functional website that I've used with my students, where they can go to it and they can upload their podcasts, and it's easy for their classmates to access them. And then we have the option of sharing them out a little bit more too. And as far as my goal with making the website, as I started putting it together, I was really, really intrigued by, I mentioned before, those educational privacy laws like FERPA. And I wanted to think about what would have to go into a website like this, where other schools, other teachers could use it. And so it became not just this platform for my students, but trying to make it so that other teachers could use it as well, such as allowing districts to audit student information and having it sort of being able to log what students are doing in case districts want to see that. So it's been a huge learning experience for me. And as far as what the future holds, really my main goal is to allow it for my students to use to share their podcasts. But ultimately, I would like it to be a place where students can come and listen to each other's podcasts. So if my students record a podcast and they want a school, in another state to listen to it, this website could facilitate that, where they could sort of share their podcasts and give each other feedback. So it's sort of just been a personal project that I've expanded to my own use. But I think there might be other teachers out there who might be interested in using it for the same type of purpose.
I think that's something that's fantastic, Tim. I mean, even going back to pre-COVID times when I was in the classroom, I would invite, other teachers or from, different districts into the classroom, using Google Meet or whatever it was that was there. Then, of course, we went through COVID, everybody's virtual, things of that sort. But this is what it kind of reminds me of still taking your school and extending it out beyond the four walls, not necessarily, in real time, but with the authentic voices of your students still being readily available. And like you mentioned, I think that this is something that can definitely be something great when now you have schools in other districts, that are listening to, other students from a different area, demographic area, just geographical area, whatever the case is, and just listening to what it is that they're putting out. And it's just a great, genuine audience of students their age, giving them feedback. And I think that's something that is great, that does not just have to stick with what you're doing at school. So it really gets me excited. Like you said, another school might be interested in hopping on, that this could turn into possibly some kind of a network altogether, like a podcasting network, where now you have neighboring states that have schools that want to participate, and now they want to go ahead and put their content in there. And now you're getting audiences from all over the nation and many districts. And I think this is be something that is wonderful and such a great idea, because I'm already seeing it, because it's just an age appropriate Spotify where everybody can get access to it,
Yeah, that's really ultimately I'm trying now with the current class that I have of my advanced public speaking class just started. And my goal is that before the end of the year, they're going to be using it to house their podcasts that they create. And I've been reaching out to some teachers about having their students listen to their podcast to give them feedback, and then allowing them to use the site if they would like to have their students share products as well. So it's exciting, and it's pretty cool to sort of just, I had this one sort of gripe about doing these podcasts, and I feel like I'm closer to having a solution that is really in this very specific niche of balancing that authentic sharing, but then not, having it just be open to everybody to access their podcast that they make.
Yeah. No, this is wonderful. And I hope that this really takes off, because I can definitely see that being something that is great. And obviously having just somewhere a repository of so many authentic, genuine voices that maybe feel that they would never be heard, but now they're being heard. Their projects are out there, their thoughts, their ideas, their learning, whatever niche they may be, podcasting in, it's out there. And, there's going to be somebody out there that is just going to find some gems in what it is that they're saying and can make a difference in, one of those students, whether it be within the district or outside the district. So I want to ask you, with that in mind, because right now I'm thinking, if I'm a student, now I'm putting myself out there. Now my podcast is now on the bell tower, and now I get a district that is, from the outside, nearby, maybe possibly many states away, listening, and maybe in your experience, I know for me, I would be like, oh my gosh, this is like very, maybe exaggerating a bit, but it could be life-changing in the sense of building confidence. Now somebody's listening, I'm getting genuine feedback. So Tim, in your experience, in the years that you've been doing this, without giving any names or anything like that, but maybe can you share a moment in one of your classes, maybe a specific student, and how one of these projects that they worked on really transformed them, their academic identity per se, or maybe they began to see themselves differently as a thinker or a communicator? What is one story that really sticks out for you?
Sure. I had a student who I had in my freshman English class, and then this student I ended up having in my advanced public speaking class a couple years later. And in my English class, this student struggled quite a bit, and sort of staying on top of the work. That I think that they had some different things going on at home that they were dealing with, and they didn't feel really focused on the work. And, a student who was capable, but maybe didn't have the opportunity or the motivation to rise to the occasion, or because of those outside forces that were going on. But this NPR Student Podcast challenge that we mentioned, I mentioned it, and they were like, I need to do this. And there was one of the prompts that they give is, what's something that students and teenagers understand that adults don't? And they ended up recording a very, very personal podcast, and they worked really hard on it. They came after school. We worked on it together. And through the process, I was talking to this student, and I think they really sort of not just worked through some of their personal things by expressing it through the podcast, but it gave them confidence, because they went through from conception of this idea all the way to the end through those steps that you were mentioning, constructing a script, organizing everything, editing it together. And from what I had heard, that students sort of way they approach some assignments in other classes, because at this point, I had them a little bit later, but in their core sort of English classes, it seemed like they sort of turned over a new leaf. And they were very appreciative just for the opportunity to express themselves and what they were doing. And I just wonder if they were doing a similar project within a different context if it would have had the same effect. Because again, we mentioned that the audience, the prospect that this is going to go out there and it's going to, other people will definitely hear this, and it's a chance for you to get your perspective out there. And I hope that as I continue to do this and as other teachers allow students to do podcasting, that they have that moment where it's sort of a breakthrough. Like, if I follow through and do this, I can get my perspective out there and demonstrate what I'm capable of.
Oh, that is fantastic. And that is so good to hear, because oftentimes, they're students that, they're not going to be band students or sports students, maybe even esports students or anything, but, just giving them an opportunity to try something different, and maybe just different media like this and podcasting, and just seeing like, wow, like I can be really good at this and communicating. And like you said, with those NPR projects and those types of prompts that they give them, I mean, this is something that is fantastic and gives them a venue to still express themselves in an academic setting. And of course, what I'm always thinking is the byproduct of all of that is how well of a communicator they're going to become, that's something that's easily transferable into any content area. And it's something that they're going to take right along with them forever. Being able to put something out into the world at such a young age, and maybe even, like I said, being vulnerable, but putting themselves out there. I mean, it's not easy. And you're talking about a young adult, maybe less than 18 years old doing this. I mean, imagine how hard it is for us as adults to be able to put ourselves out there and sometimes
Totally.
be in that vulnerable spot. And so they're learning some great lessons at such an early age. So I want to ask you, Tim, for our audience members that are listening to this, and maybe they're like really drawn into this and say, hey, I really want to start implementing some podcasting in my classroom setting. What would you recommend as far as lowest barrier to entry? Because as we know, budgets are tight, and sometimes the accessibility to some platforms or tech, might be very difficult. But what would you say your lowest barrier of entry would be into podcasting, so that you can recommend to a teacher?
Sure. One of the big hurdles, something that can be very intimidating, is an assumption that in order for me to bring podcasting to my class, I need to invest in audio interfaces and microphones. And there definitely is something to be said, again, about that authenticity of having that equipment, but it definitely is not required in order to record a podcast. And if you look up online what a definition of a podcast is, there are a lot of different ones out there, but I really reduce it to an audio expression of someone's ideas. And really, the equipment is something that's intimidating. Just access to a Chromebook or a phone is really enough to get started with recording what could be known as a podcast. Having a built-in voice recorder and having a Google Classroom assignment where it's shared through Classroom, that is a podcast. And a lot of times that's a great way to start off. When I introduce the idea of audio recording, a lot of times it's just, hey, just hit record, talk a little bit, and then upload it. And then you can sort of work yourself up from there. So it's almost like you and the students are going up this ladder, and you can get more sort of in depth as you go. But as far as an online resource that I really love, again, I keep mentioning NPR, but aside from having their competition, they have a whole curriculum online to teach students about podcasting. And it has lessons about introducing students to podcasting, talking about recording, coming up with a type of show to use. And it goes really in depth, and you can sort of pick and choose which lessons and what aspects of it work best for the classroom that you're in. So that's a great resource that I use to this day. I'll go through and I'll think about my students and what skills do they need. But again, it's the idea of just hitting record with whatever equipment you happen to have. And then there are just a plethora of great resources online to sort of have a more genuine product as time goes on, but you definitely don't have to start with all the bells and whistles.
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fobbs from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg Smash It, I mean App Smash It with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Yeah, no, and that's great advice. And that's something that I always tell a lot of teachers too, is just like you mentioned, it's lowest barrier to entry is if they have a phone, a Chromebook, like you said, it's already built-in recorder, or even the district. Some of the things too that I tell districts, if you are a district that might have something like Screencastify, you can go ahead and record that. I mean, you're recording video, but then you can just download the audio. So you've got that option there too as well. You've also got Adobe Podcast as well that is there. And if you're an Adobe district that where you subscribe to the Adobe Creative Cloud, that's free. And then you can go into a little bit more in depth with editing as far as transcript type of editing. So there's so many possibilities out there. But I do agree with Tim, and for all our listeners, do not feel overwhelmed and do not feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to start this. Simply with a Chromebook and just clicking record, you're going to be fine. And then just kind of work your way up from there, depending on where it is that you yourself as the teacher and educator want to go, and take your students right along with you. And then, of course, after that, you can get into a lot of the fancier equipment, good mics, and interfaces and so on as needed. But again, great advice, Tim. So I want to ask you, Tim, as we kind of start wrapping up the conversation, I want to ask you, like, for yourself, in your experience, how long have you been doing podcasting now?
So I formally, in my advanced public speaking class, this is my 5th or 6th year doing it as sort of more like all-in podcasting projects from start to finish. But I did some voice recording things before that with students.
Okay. So I want to ask you, like, now that you've had about 5-6 years of experience, and so thinking ahead now, next 5 or 6 years, how do you see student created media reshaping assessment? Maybe portfolio development. We talk all about that a lot. And maybe in the way that schools will start defining learning artifacts as opposed to just state testing, worksheets. What might you see or hope you see maybe within the next 5 to 6 years?
I mean, I think that especially with AI becoming so prevalent in all of our lives every day, whether it's in the classroom or not, I hope that assessment especially becomes more and more focused on the creation process and the actual skills that students have, and giving them an opportunity to demonstrate those skills through assessment. And a project like a podcast is such a great way for students to express their skills. And like you had alluded to earlier, getting their genuine understanding through their authentic voice. It's if a student is passionately talking about a topic, you're going to get a more full photo of what they actually know compared to maybe a written assessment or a multiple choice test or something like that. I mean, the issue, again, is sort of the logistics and the facilitation of it. Grading a podcast is more subjective than grading a written test. So more time goes into it. But I think that we're going to have to put more time into it in order to, again, get that genuine understanding of what students know. So I think that it really is not, in my mind, some novelty that is, this is just a popular thing right now. I think it's such a great avenue to follow to get that genuine assessment information, understanding what a student knows.
Excellent. Awesome, Tim. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today and just having a great time, and especially talking about podcasting and a little bit more in depth as far as your work, the work of your students, what the bell tower is. And I mean, for me, I'm really excited about that, as far as being able to extend beyond the walls there within your district and possibly including more states in. And so I'm going to keep an eye out on that project because I know that that's something that can be very fantastic, and looking forward to that. But before we end the show, Tim, as you know, I always love to end the show with these last 3 questions. And I know it's been a while since you've been on the show, so I know that your answers are definitely going to be different based on, the times that we're in now as far as education is concerned. So I'm going to start off here with question number 1 for you. Question number 1 is, as we know, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. So for Superman, that kryptonite was what weakened, Superman. So I want to ask you, Tim, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current kryptonite?
When I saw this question, I don't remember what I said the last time I was on the show. But one thing that consistently sort of, I try to not let sort of knock me down in education is just the idea of just hype, whether it's for a tool, whether it's for AI in general, whether it's for this or for that or a buzzword, because I just don't like feeling like something is being sort of pushed and the interest is not in the learning of the students and advancing teaching. If there's some other outside interest, some cynicism starts to creep in. And I don't like the feeling of that. So sort of the kind of hype that feels sort of manufactured, which, I mean, take your pick of what thing that is, changes week to week, basically. But it's something that I try not to let affect me, but sometimes can get under my skin a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That we do see a lot, and even going to conferences, you run into that and you see that hype and you're like, oh my gosh, and yeah, I mean, I totally feel you on that. All right. Question number 2, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, and we'll put it maybe in the busiest street that could exist there in New Jersey, wherever that may be, and you can have your billboard there, what would your billboard say and why?
I love this question. And I'm going to have to cheat a little bit, and I have 2 answers. So
perfect.
The first thing that came to mind is just, I'd love to have a billboard that just says "Be kind" on it. Really simple. I originally was going to have it say more like "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle," but that's a little too long for a billboard, I suppose. But I always try to give people benefit of the doubt. If someone is maybe not acting in a way that you agree with, maybe they have something else going on. I try to show people that attitude, and I hope everybody does that. My other one would probably just say something like "Use your blinker," but that's more of just a driving specific thing.
There you go. I like that one. It's good. You need to tell, maybe you should say like, "Did you remember to buy your blinker fluid?"
It's like, yeah, go get that fixed.
Yeah, go get that fixed. All right. And my last question for you, Tim, is if you could trade places with anyone for a single day, who would that be and why?
So typically when people answer this, is it usually a very specific person, like one person in the world? Or is it can it be a more sort of general answer, like an occupation?
Well, they're very specific, but I've never actually had anybody give an occupation, so you may be the first.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this, and I was, if I could sort of take someone's role for a day, something I would love to do is to be someone who works in like a fire watch tower in a national park. So yeah, they have those big high up towers where someone stays up there sort of isolated, looking over the forest and just making sure that there's not anything going on. And I think that with everything going on in the world, everything is so busy. It's a serious job, but that also would be an opportunity for me to sort of, get away and get into nature a little bit and sort of have a reset. So it's also an experience that I've never had before. So it's a new experience, a little change of pace. So I'd love to do that for a day and see what it's like.
There you go. I have seen, I think there was either a clip of that, and I found it so interesting. I mean, you're in isolation, you're pretty much there on your own, and you're just looking out into the horizons and just seeing, all right, is there anything going on? But yeah, like you're right, just kind of disconnecting from it all and just taking it all in, kind of resetting. So that's good. Awesome, Tim. Well, as always, Tim, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being an amazing guest, an amazing friend. And, I just really look forward to hopefully one day getting to see you again. I know it's been going on 3 years now since the last time that we saw each other, but hopefully we'll run into each other soon and we can talk music, talk podcasting, and just talk about life, and we'll be all good. But appreciate you being here, and thank you so much for the amazing shares. And for our audience members, if you do not follow Tim yet, make sure that you follow him. Make sure you follow him on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that we're going to drop all the socials where you can connect with him into the show notes as well. So please make sure that you connect, and also make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 256, or actually 356 episodes. Man, I'm in the 200s, but it's 356 wonderful episodes where I promise you that you will find some knowledge nuggets that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. And again, a big shout out to our sponsors. Thank you so much, Book Creator, Eduate, and Yellow Dig. Book Creator, Eduate, and Peel Back Education. We appreciate all of your support so we can bring some amazing conversations into our space. And until next time, my friends, don't forget, stay techie.